There's a strange comfort in thinking we're at the top, that with our cities, our smartphones, and our insulated lives, we've somehow outgrown nature. But sometimes, nature reminds us, with startling clarity, that we never left the food chain. You see, most of us will never truly know what it's like to feel wild fear. It crawls up your spine, and your body reacts before your brain catches up. You realize that whatever's watching is not curious, but hungry, and you're prey in their territory. Bear attacks are rare, but when they happen, they leave a mark on the collective memory of a place. Because they shatter the boundary between civilization and wilderness in the most violent way possible. Today, we're going into the stories that are as real as they are haunting. The Sankebetsu brown bear incident. It's still one of the deadliest in Japan's history. A polar bear encounter in Norway that ended in unspeakable tragedy. And the chilling events that took place in Canada just a few years ago. These incidents will make you think twice before stepping into the forest alone. Let's begin. History usually leaves its worst scars in stone or memory, but in the winter of 1915, deep in the snowy forests of Hokkaido, it left claw marks. It began quietly with a startled horse, and then a bear appeared, massive, silent, and far too early to be awake from hibernation. It was mid-November when the Akita family saw him for the first time. He wasn't prowling, he didn't growl. He simply appeared near the edge of their farmland. The family froze, and the bear, he ate corn, calmly, like he'd done it before. That should have been the end of it, but the animal came back, again and again. Each time a little bolder, a little closer, until the head of the household decided that enough was enough. He wasn't a man of violence, but he was a man with a family and a wounded sense of safety. So he called in two matagi, traditional bear hunters, men who understood winter and wild things that don't scare easily. On November 30th, the four of them waited, and when the bear came again, they fired. Bullets tore through the trees. The bear was hit but not killed. They followed his bloody trail through the snow deep toward Mount Onishika. But a storm rose suddenly, and the forest vanished behind a wall of white. This was when the hunters turned back. They left that night believing the bear would do the same. After all, he'd been shot. Surely that would be enough. But on December 9th, 1915, something unexpected happened. The sun hadn't climbed far when the bear came back. But this time, it didn't linger at the edge of a field. It didn't sniff around for corn. It walked straight through the door of the Ota household. Inside, Mayu Abe was cradling a baby while her husband was out working the land. In a matter of seconds, the house became a battlefield. The child stood no chance. And Mayu, screaming and swinging firewood, was dragged into the trees. What they found later, buried under snow, was barely human anymore. The villagers tried to respond with reason. They posted guards, created traps, and circled wagons around their fear. But reason didn't work on this bear. That same night, it returned. This time, it smashed through the window of the Mayuke home, where women and children had been sent for safety. The flames in the hearth were knocked over, and darkness swallowed the room. Yayo, the matriarch, tried to flee with her son clinging to her legs. But the bear mauled the guard, tore through the room, killed two boys, and wounded a third. A pregnant woman begged for her unborn child to be spared, but unfortunately, she was eaten alive. By the time the guards returned, it was too late. They found Yayo staggering down the road, bloodied and wild-eyed. What followed was a desperate, ugly hunt, an attempt to lure the bear with the bodies of its victims. Protests, despair, and gunfire that never seemed to hit. Until Yamamoto Hakichi, the fallen hunter who had once pawned his rifle for a drink, came back. He tracked the beast alone, found it resting beneath an oak, and killed it immediately. The bear, later confirmed to be Kesagaki, weighed over 750 pounds and stood nearly 9 feet tall. But numbers can't capture what it took. Not the lost children, not the grief that hollowed out an entire village, not the way nightmares lingered in the woods long after the snow melted. A century later, the scars still run deep in Sankebetsu. And Kesagaki's name reminds us that when the wild comes calling, it doesn't always knock. In 2020, two separate but similarly tragic bear attacks shocked communities in Canada. They reminded everyone just how unpredictable encounters with wildlife can be, even in places people visit for peace and recreation. The first happened in Saskatchewan, near McKee Lake. Catherine, a 44-year-old experienced camper and paddleboarder, was enjoying the outdoors with her fiancé. They were on the water when suddenly a bear attacked. It all happened so fast. There were no warnings or growls, just a quick, violent encounter. Her fiancé tried desperately to save her. He fought the bear barehanded, but unfortunately, Catherine didn't survive. The bear was shot and killed afterward, and officials labeled the attack as unprovoked. The incident was a heartbreaking moment that shattered the assumption that being cautious is always enough when you're in nature. And then, just a month later, another tragic attack occurred in Ontario near Red Lake. Stephanie, a 29-year-old woman, and her father's girlfriend were at a remote cabin. While her father was away fetching water, a bear entered their property in broad daylight and attacked Stephanie. When her father returned, he found the bear dragging Stephanie into the woods. He managed to scare the bear away and then shot it, but sadly, Stephanie didn't survive. These two incidents tell us that despite our best efforts, the wild remains wild. Even in places where we feel safe, nature doesn't always follow rules or warnings. In 2011, a group of British teenagers set off on what was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime, a month-long Arctic expedition to Svalbard, Norway. It was designed to build character and study the impact of climate change. For 17-year-old Horatio Chappell, it was a chance to grow and to step closer to his dream of becoming a doctor. Horatio was one of 80 students taking part in the expedition organized by the British Schools Exploring Society. These were bright, curious kids camping under the midnight sun, absorbing the raw beauty of the Arctic and learning about a world few people ever get to see. But on the morning of August 5th, everything changed. Just before dawn, a polar bear entered their campsite. Somehow it had slipped past the perimeter tripwires that were supposed to go off if a bear approached. The bear went straight for the tents and attacked Horatio while he was still inside his sleeping bag. Other students screamed and scrambled. Several were injured as they tried to flee. This was when one of the expedition leaders, Michael Reed, managed to shoot and kill the bear, but not before the damage was done. Horatio didn't survive. He was just 17 years old. In the days that followed, the story broke hearts around the world, not just because of the tragedy, but also because of who Horatio was. Friends described him as intelligent and someone who cared deeply about the world around him. A young man who had plans to study medicine, who wanted to help others, who had no idea his life would end on the very edge of the world under Arctic skies. An investigation later found that the tripwire system may have failed and that the rifle used by the leaders was faulty. It raised serious questions about safety protocols for youth expeditions in extreme environments. But beyond the headlines and the inquiries, there's this: a bright young soul lost too soon. A moment that shattered the illusion of control and showed us that nature doesn't always owe us safety, only honesty. When we tend to talk about the wild, we often refer to it as something far away, like a thing you visit, document, and leave behind. But for some people in these stories, the wild was the last thing they saw. Nature doesn't always roar before it strikes. Sometimes it creeps in silently, under the cover of snow, through the hush of the forest, or beneath the surface of water that looks still. And yet, even in tragedy, these stories reveal something oddly beautiful: how fragile we are, and how deeply alive we can feel in the presence of things bigger than us. If these tales moved you or made you rethink what adventure really means, feel free to subscribe and share, because the wild is still out there, and so are the stories we've yet to tell. Until next time.